Welcome to So You Want to Start a Business podcast. Welcome. I'm your host, Ingrid Thompson. This is a podcast about and for entrepreneurs and leaders who think big, who take intentional action to create business success, to create financial independence and make a difference in the world. My aim is to provide a helpful, lively and thought-provoking podcast based on the feedback. It's all of this and more. We know that many of our listeners are starting a business or are already running a business of their own. Ultimately, we're all building our businesses so we can have an impact in the world and live a life we love, generating healthy cash flow, sustained profits, and paying ourselves for what we do. Listen in because the So You Want to Start a Business podcast has been made just for you. I am your host, Ingrid Thompson, and I have been running my own business, Healthy Numbers, for almost 20 years. And over that time, I've worked with literally hundreds of people to help them build and grow their own business, successful and thriving. In this podcast, I speak with inspiring entrepreneurs and business owners who tell their business stories, and they tell it like it is, the ups and the downs. Each episode is your opportunity to pick up tactics to try in your business. Today, I reckon you'll find a ton of value as we welcome Sarah Wolfer as we talk about more than business.
And I've found that there's just not a lot of other women coaches. And I've found that here in the US for soccer, only 21% of coaches are women. And so then I was like, okay, so it's not just my experience, it's actually something that we need to address.
Yeah.
And I made a proposal to my employer that for coaching at the time, saying, hey, these are the ways we can fix it. I'm here to help. Can I help be a part of this process with your company? And they just never responded. And so finally I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this myself. And I started Girl Boss Sports basically after that.
So here is Sarah, another guest who has an idea and nobody would listen. So she started her own company. Can you believe 21% of soccer coaches, and soccer is actually such a female-dominated sport in the US. Anyway, this is a super interesting conversation about a wide range of topics and, of course, Sarah's business story. Did you know that 96% of C-suite executives across the US played sport in their teenage years? And in this episode, Sarah talks about what it is about participating in sport that translates into business leadership. Anyway, enough from me. Listen in as Sarah tells us how starting this business has met all of her passions and so much more. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, and here we are today with Sarah Wolfer. Hello, Sarah.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. So, Sarah, tell us, where in the world are you right now?
I'm in the Seattle, Washington area.
Oh, lovely. So we're just on the other side of the ocean there. You're just up there in the ocean. Lovely. So now, what is your business? What is this business that you run?
Yeah, so my company is called Girl Boss Sports. And the long story short of it is it's sports for girls by women. We have two goals. That is everything we do. The first of those is hire more women coaches. And then the second of these is to basically just keep girls in sports because they're dropping out so much quicker than boys.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful business, and I couldn't wait when I saw your podcast application come through. I thought this is going to be such a fantastic conversation about business and about girls in sport. So, when did you actually start your business?
December 2018. So just a little bit. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary not too long ago.
Oh, that's good. So you've probably got some fabulous stories for our listeners. So why did you start this business? And you've kind of alluded to that, with the girls in sport, but why did you want to make a business out of this?
Yeah, the long story short of it is I've been playing soccer since I was 4 years old. And I've played really competitively growing up. I was the one that was, in my high school wearing my Letterman's jacket and dribbling a soccer ball between classes because I wanted to improve my first touch. Or the one of my coaches, I can't remember when, but told me that I need to be so comfortable with my soccer ball that I should just sleep with it. So I literally did that. So you can definitely say that I've been obsessed with sports my entire life. I went on to play collegiately and semi-professionally. And then actually I'm still an athlete now, even though I'm 30. I play a different sport, professional tackle football with the Oregon Ravens. Actually, it's a little another fact about me. But I had some experiences as a female athlete that were challenging, to say the least. I remember, just to share one story, I was playing at a pretty competitive level, and I had a coach scream at me in my face from, what started out as a conversation 6 feet away, ended up with him 2 inches away from my face, and every expletive that you can imagine. And I just remember the spittle flying and hitting me, and looking behind him and seeing the assistant coach just with her jaw dropped. And, the system failed to do the right thing in that, during that. So I actually quit soccer, didn't touch a soccer ball for an entire year after that. And so just wanting to show that contrast between I was the one who was obsessed growing up, and then to actually literally not touch a soccer ball for an entire year because of that. So I just, that was one of the reasons why I ended up quitting sports for a while. And there's a lot of reasons why girls are dropping out of sports, but it's a problem. And so that was one half of the company, is keeping girls in sports. And then the other half of it is I've also been coaching soccer for 16 years now. That was my first job ever. It was when I was 14, coaching soccer. And I've also had instances as a female coach that have been troublesome. For another stories, I like stories, to go along with the data. I was standing, again, I've been doing this for a long time at this point. I'm standing on the sideline wearing different clothes than I am now. I was wearing my coaching attire, my clipboard, the whistle around my neck, looking really official, and about to check my team in for the game. And the referee walks over, looks me in the eyes, and then instead of talking to me, talks to the dad who happens to be over there tying his daughter's shoe, and asks him if he's the coach. And I'm just like, here, I am the soccer coach. Is that so out of the ordinary that you would see a woman coaching this team? And, I've coached in all different, Miami and Seattle and Oregon and all these different places, and I've found that there's just not a lot of other women coaches. And I've found that here in the U.S. for soccer, only 21% of coaches are women. And so then I was like, okay, so it's not just my experience, it's actually something that we need to address.
Yeah.
And I made a proposal to my employer that for coaching at the time, saying, hey, these are the ways we can fix it. I'm here to help. Can I help be a part of this process with your company? And they just never responded. And so finally I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this myself. And I started Girl Boss Sports basically after that.
That's a fantastic story, Sarah. And you can hear every ounce of passion behind what you're saying there. And, I think we've still got a long way to go with that, how often somebody points to the man as the person making the decision, or are you the person in this role? Yeah, it happens across so many industries, doesn't it? So you've kind of answered this, but what did you want the business to give you from day one? Like, what was it going to give you? Like, you asked the company you're working for to do this and they didn't respond, so you figured you're going to do it yourself. But what was the business going to give you?
Basically, I wanted to find something, as we all are looking for what our purpose in life is, right? I wanted to find something that met kind of all of my passions, and that, my skills and what I knew I could actually affect change in. And my 3 kind of biggest passions I identified were women supporting women. I absolutely love that entire community, and I'm sure you've met a whole bunch of people too, who just, this collaboration mentality has been amazing. And then leadership. I'm a huge nerd, so I read about 40 or 50 leadership books a year, and it's just something I'm really passionate about. And so I wanted to combine that. And another stat really quick, because that's just who I am as a human, but Ernst & Young did a study, and they found that 96% of female C-suite executives, so CEOs, COOs, CFOs, all those people, they all played sports during their teenage years. So if girls are dropping out of sports, but they're also girls who participate in sports are becoming the future leaders, how do we fix across all industries having more women leaders? So I wanted to do that. And then obviously my other greatest love is sports. So I found Girl Boss Sports could meet my passion for all 3 of those things, basically.
That's fantastic. That's a very interesting statistic about the correlation between playing sport and going on to be C-suite leaders. It's fascinating. So I wonder, what is it that is happening in sports that actually allows women to continue to do that? Do you have a theory?
So many things. A lot of things. I just think about the lessons that I've learned through sports, and what part of what we do at my company even is not just how to soccer or how to insert other sport here, but we also focus on things like leadership and confidence and team building and respect, and taking all of those small steps to achieve a goal that you have to do in sports. It's the same in work settings. And so we automatically learn these lessons through sports, and it translates for me in life as well.
Yeah. Do you know what I would be fascinated by, given that my passion is around small businesses? I've had my time in the corporate world. It would be fascinating to do the same correlative study between people who are successful in business and people who've had successful sports. Because for me, people talk about the failure and about how long it takes and about the rigor and the persistence. And for me, that's what sport teaches people or enhances and really builds in. You have to be dribbling that ball all the time to be as good as that. And we have a famous cricketer in Australia, Don Bradman, who was one of the greatest cricketers, and he spent hours every day with his cricket ball attached to the clothesline, just hitting the ball, hitting the ball, hitting the ball. I mean, you don't get to be the greatest batsman in the world without hitting the ball hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. So that persistence that we need in business, I'd be really fascinated to see if Ernst & Young wants to do that study. Maybe they have. We could have a look at it.
They probably have.
Back to you and your business, Sarah. When did you realise the business was real? Was there a moment as you got started, and it's only a year and a bit since, but was there a moment when you thought, holy dooly, this is a business?
Yeah, there's probably several moments. Hiring first few coaches, that was a big one. But I think the biggest one that I experienced was when I entered a business contest here in the Pacific Northwest area, so Washington, Oregon, and Idaho and other states. And it was a 4-month process, all these different rounds, creating the business plan, meeting with a business coach, doing a whole marketing campaign, all of these different steps, and making it to the final round where I had to do a live pitch in front of a huge audience of my company in 6 minutes or less and try to win the grand prize. And I ended up winning one of the smaller ones, the best LGBT-owned business. And that moment and being able to, my first ever client at my company, I was able to get her a ticket, this 11-year-old or 12-year-old girl. So her and her mom were there in the audience and winning that big check that I still have in my office, actually. So winning that and just standing there and having the community supporting and just seeing that this is such a need, I think that was the biggest moment where I realized this is kind of what I really should be doing right now at this point in my life.
Yeah. That's lovely. Every single interview I've done has had a different answer for that question. And I just love the question because it just brings out that moment, because there is a moment when the business is real. As you said, there's other ones as well, but there's that real standout moment that you go, pinch me. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Customers, early days, how did you know that the business was viable? Where did you search for customers? How do you find customers now? Talk to us about that part of building your business.
So at the time when I started the company, or before I started the company, I was also doing private soccer lessons on my own. And so my weekends were full of clients, and mostly it was female athletes that were coming to me. And my schedule honestly just started getting too full, and I just didn't want to turn away all of these clients. But when I would talk to the new people, say, hey, have you found any other women that you want to work with? Because the main reason they were coming to me is they wanted to work with a female coach. And the parents kept saying they couldn't find any other woman coaches in their area. I was the only one. So I started researching. I couldn't find any. And at one point, I even tried recruiting one of my clients who is a junior college athlete. I was training her to get into Division I or Division II. At the time, I was like, can I train you to be a coach and I can give you some of my clients? But she was too busy to actually say yes. And so that's when I realized that there is a need for this. And what I basically did was start with a regionalized system. So I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with the Seattle area, but basically from the northernmost point all the way down to the 3 counties, I have coaches available, women coaches. So if somebody reaches out and needs a woman coach, they're there. And then it kind of expanded from there, and we started basically how we get clients now. Our biggest business is by partnering with other organizations. And so I think the biggest reason that we've been able to find so much success in the first year was literally through this collaboration over competition motto. So by partnering with one, for example, another big moment where I realized it was real was we partnered with the Seattle Youth Soccer Association, and we brought in 16 women coaches to work with thousands of athletes over a 6-week training program. And that brought in a lot of money to the team, being able to pay all of those women, 16 women at once, managing all of their schedules, all of the locations. So now basically we find clients through our partners mostly.
Yeah, it really is. Having collaborations, and who else has the people that you need. And just so you know, about half the listening audience of this is in the US. So I think pretty much half the people listening will know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
So, and even a lot of us outside of that know exactly where you are, because I think Seattle's a very well-known part of the US. That gorgeous
Awesome.
West Coast. So viability for the business, did you crunch some numbers, before you quit your job? How were you going to pay yourself? Talk to us about, the viability aspect. How did you know it was going to be viable? Because you mentioned there you got paid a lot of money when you did that partnership, but, what were you thinking about viability before you got started?
Yeah, so I started out and I was, running, doing my own job still, plus running the company. So I started out as a side hustle, and then I'm doing part-time work on the side and then also running the company with the ultimate goal of someday being able to quit my other jobs. But for viability, I think doing that business contest I mentioned and having to do the business plan, and we had to do 3-year financial projections and all of this stuff, and then meet with a business coach, get it confirmed that these numbers made sense, and then pitching that on stage in front of an audience. That was why, we had to do extensive research into our target markets, and it was a great contest. It gave me a lot of skills too. So that was when I realized it was cool. And then getting some of those big projects all around the same time, like that one I mentioned, $16,000 in one 6-week period, and we started a 10-week project at the same time. That brought in a lot of money. So those were the moments when I was like, oh wow, this actually can be a full-time job someday.
That's fantastic, isn't it? It's wonderful. And that projection just gives you the confidence that that the money's there, that the expenses can be covered, that you can pay yourself. The financial projections are so important. So you self-funded, and then you used, just in terms of funding, to clarify that, so you self-funded through working and through part-time work, and then gradually now you pay yourself and the business funds itself through the deals that you strike with clients and partners and collaboration.
Yeah, so basically I started by funding it through all of the private lessons I was doing, brought them over into my company, scaled the business, bought all of the equipment for, I've hired 20 women since we started. So buying 20 women their soccer equipment, doing all of those things, all of those business expenses was paid for through the lessons. And then now it was the partnerships. I started paying myself an income, but then now we're about to scale. So I brought on an admin person, legal counsel, marketing, graphic design, photographer. So now I'm not paying myself right now. And so still, running my own, doing my own private practice as a therapist on the side. Until I can get to the point after we scale again. So make income, now back off of it so that we can scale to a bigger degree again.
Yeah, so you can make payroll for the other people that you need to grow this as you want to.
Yes, exactly.
How have you decided pricing? Because I'm thinking this is an unusual mix of offering and value. And how did you decide how much to charge? And
So it depended on what the project we were doing was. For most of it was just basically research. And the other part of it was, like, I can think of one project, for example, I didn't know how much, it was like a team training thing, which was different than any other service we had done before. And I think that in going into that meeting, they thought I was going to come up with the price, but I didn't want to, shoot too low or too high and then, either lose the business or be really undervaluing ourselves. So I was just like, well, what do you pay that other contractor I know you work with, which is this group of men coaches? And so they actually told me, and I was like, okay, I expect to be paid exactly that. They said yes. And so that's kind of when I realized I was able to base all of my team training pricing off of that.
Yeah. And then that helps you with a springboard to future. And in fact, maybe you could probably charge more now.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, because it's more bespoke. And so exit strategy, it sounds like you're scaling and building right now, so you might not be actually thinking about an exit strategy, but is that something you've thought about for down the track?
I have thought about it, but I really, at least at this point in my life, I really love what I'm doing, and it's all of my favorite things, and so I don't want to leave. I want to get it to the point where I could just be running this company and playing football. That's what I want. So at this point, I do not have an exit strategy, and I hope I can keep doing this for forever.
Sounds good. But we do, it is important to think about succession and how you take holidays, and, so it's more than just exit forever. It's that, how do you take a month off, or how do you go and, do something in another part of the world and run the business? So it's always a question I like to ask. Okay, so some reflection. If you could take a magic wand, and you sound like a really practical person, so you probably don't even believe in magic wands, but
I do. I definitely do.
Oh, good. What might you go back and do differently?
I think the greatest lesson that I've learned really recently is about asking for help. I like to be a real person, but now that I've realized that, yes, this is one of my passions, women in sports, girls in sports, but it's also a lot of other people's passions who have very different skill sets than I have. And so right now, as I'm scaling up, being able to bring on someone like legal counsel who wants to volunteer her time, it's a win-win situation because she's breaking into sports and entertainment law, and she's now helping me really scale up the business. And that has led to me now asking all these other people in my life, like my roommate, who's going to now become our business development and operations director because she has extensive experience doing that and is going to volunteer 5 to 10 hours a week in that setting as well. So now I'm realizing the more people I'm asking for help, and maybe not financial assistance, that hasn't been something I've asked, but asking for what skills can you bring to the table if you're passionate about these two goals, that I wish I had done sooner. I realized right at the year mark that I was the bottleneck and that I couldn't scale anymore because I was keeping everything. And that was a hard moment for me to look in the mirror and be like, you are literally the reason why your company is not scaling right now because of you. And so you need to do something about it. And so bringing on that admin person, bringing on those other people who are willing to help towards this mission has been huge.
Yeah. And some of them, it sounds like some of them are paid, some of them are not paid at this point. Yeah. And it can be a good way to bring in the skills, to have people volunteer their time for their experience to then be able to use that. Like you said, your legal counsel is branching into this area, creating a niche for herself, or niche, as you say. And so getting that experience is wonderful. This is a slightly different question. If somebody could have told you something at the beginning, is there something you wish you'd known?
I think the biggest thing is actually before I started the company, I wish I had known to just jump into it because it was actually I've been thinking of doing something like this. And I always knew I wanted to run my own company at some point in the future, but I always kept thinking, I need more skills first. I need to learn this area. I don't know enough about this. And then finally, when life circumstances led me to actually doing it, I was like, no, I can actually do this. And a lot of people can do this. There's a lot of resources out there available to help. So I think that's the biggest thing is I wish someone had told me before, like, just go for it. You can do it.
Yeah, you can. And that's a really sporty thing too, isn't it? If you how did it take you so long to get that one? So, Sarah, is it tough? Has it been tough? Has it been difficult? What makes it tough? And how do you carry on?
Yeah, I think the toughest times for me have been when I'm going through personal challenges at the same time as running a company and also working on the side. So, I mean, to be vulnerable for a second, last year in the middle of my, first year in starting the business, doing something brand new, I started a new sport as well, started playing football, and then also was still working, part-time. And between all of those things, I also ended up going through a divorce and coming out during that time and realizing that I'm gay. And so that was a big thing. And so it's been awesome now that I'm on the other side of it. But that going through the really personal challenges at the same time as trying to run a company for the first time and play a new sport for the first time, it was the hardest and most rewarding year of my life for sure. And I learned a lot about self-care and balance, and therapy helped a lot. And as a therapist, I'm always a big advocate for, seeking mental health therapy. And so that was huge, but learning experience for sure.
Yeah, it totally, it's funny how a lot of things just kind of happen at the same time and create a sort of perfect storm or a whirlwind.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, what else have you got, universe? Hand it over now because I want to deal with it all at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that because, it's the tough things that make us stronger, and that from your sport and from what you do with therapy.
Okay.
So you mentioned you've hired a team, the admin, marketing, the legal counsel. And you mentioned therapy. Have there been coaches, mentors, like that sort of, who is that cohort of people and how have they helped you? I mean, you talk about coaching from a sport. Have you had a business coach? You don't have to mention names, but, how does that fit into growing the business?
Yeah, so I have a mentor. And the way I got her as a mentor was basically I saw her talk at an event. It was a panel for, I think it was $1 Million Women panel or something. And she owns a construction company. And I really just liked a lot of what she was saying, especially given that she's in a really male-dominated industry as well. And someone in the audience asked her the question of, well, how do you go about getting a mentor? And so she answered that, well, the best way is, because a lot of people who would be mentors don't have a lot of time. So if you just go ask somebody, hey, do you have 15 minutes for a coffee? then usually the mentors are going to say yes to something like that, because 15 minutes anyone can say yes to. So then after the event, I went and did it, and I asked her if she had 15 minutes for coffee, and it worked. And we meet regularly. I need to actually, that reminded me, I need to set up another meeting with her again. But so she's definitely one of them, and just pick her brain, and she's been super supportive. And then my girlfriend has been huge, and then she's brought her skills into the company as well. And she has marketing experience, so now she's redoing my whole website and social media and just making it way better. The legal person, I have a graphic designer, the photographer, and I'm bringing on my roommate, and just all these powerful women in the community who are willing to, use their time to help advance the mission. Plus, I couldn't do it without all the coaches. Like I mentioned, I hired 20 women this year in 2019, and so I couldn't have done it without all of them. So,
yeah, you've got a pretty good support network around you. It sounds like it.
Definitely.
So, Sarah, how do you get feedback? Where do you look for feedback? Who gives you feedback? Because we need it, don't we?
Oh, definitely. Feedback. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so we need people around us pointing it out. And sometimes I hate it, but overall it's usually really useful. So one of those, I'm lucky again with my girlfriend. She's pretty direct and honest with me. And so and whether we're talking about the business or other things in general, areas that can grow and improve, she's definitely someone. But then my other two would be when I meet with my admin person or my legal person every single week. I meet with them separately. And, for the legal side, I'm kind of this more of a visionary idea person, and she can be the one that's saying, have you thought about these 12 risks that might go along with that idea you have? How can we create plans around that? And then the admin person, I can say, okay, here's my idea. Here's what my legal person says. How can we now make this idea actually happen? And she can make it work. So those two are definitely huge in the success of the company.
I love that your legal counsel comes up with 12 reasons, 12 risks. Not just one or two, a whole 12.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe 12 is an exaggeration, but
no, I'm sure there's 12. And some of them are probably really big risks, and some of them are just teeny risks, but they're still risks to be considered. And you can't consider all of them and not do anything. It's just you need to know that they're there, and how do you mitigate for them? That's really the reason to identify risks, is not to stop you from doing something, but in fact to allow you to, as you said, go to the admin person and say, how do we fix these, or how do we mitigate against them? Sarah, 3 characteristics that you have that make you successful in business.
The number one is my leadership, and I'm lucky that I've had a lot of experience of that. It was in a different field in social services, but those skills and my constant thirst for knowledge in those areas, I guess, is the other part of that. And now I'm really excited that I'm getting my company to the point that I can actually really use those skills again and delegate and do that fun side of things. And then my growth mindset, I think, is the other one. Just, again, wanting to learn and grow and constantly get better. That's huge. And then the other one, probably just me always going 100%. I don't ever have to do anything. I'm either all in or all out. A football coach the other day pulled me aside and, during the huddle, and was like, are you always 100%, or do you have like a dimmer switch, or do you ever go 75? And I'm like, no. Would you really want that, coach? I'm going to be 100% every time. That's what we want. And so that's also how I approach life in general, and definitely my business too.
Yeah, it's amazing the difference it can make to just be 100% on, and that's where you'll see that benefit showing up in the business as well. So people come to you maybe and they say, I'm thinking about starting my own business as well. What would you say to them?
Do it. End of sentence, just do it. And then also research it. Again, I found for Washington State, there's a whole guidebook, step-by-step instructions for how to start a business here. And there's probably something equivalent in many places that your listeners are at. And I know it's scary, but I think that that's a normal part of this, is to be scared and just do it anyways. My word of the year for 2019 was courage. And I feel like that was really put to the test with everything I already mentioned, but it's great looking back and knowing that I acted within my values, and that, it was really, really, really scary at times, and had moments where I didn't think I could do it, and imposter syndrome and all these other things I'm sure we could talk about for hours. But at the end of the day, I did it, and I would recommend all of your listeners, if they have an idea, go for it. Research it and then go for it. Yeah, research it,
do find out what you need to do. Yeah. So as we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to tell our listening audience, who are people who either already have a business and therefore they're looking for some inspiration from other people's stories, or they're in that idea stage. You mentioned imposter syndrome there. We know that's a big one to deal with. That balancing your energy, getting everything right. Is there anything you'd leave us with as we draw this to a close?
I think probably two things. One of them is self-care. That has to be huge. So I have my habits and routines down, and when I don't do them, that's when I suffer the most. So things like setting my coffee maker the night before, which seems really simple, but waking up to a nice cup of coffee in the morning, that helps me wake up, helps me actually get out of my bed and either go work out or go read a book.
Yeah.
And that saying of you can't pour from an empty cup is really something I live by. I need to fill myself and fill others. And then the second I would probably say, when you are to that point, and it really almost probably are at that point anytime, reach back and help other people, help women is what my passion is help other women who are on the road, because we're not gonna be able to do it alone. We need others. So it's good to get help, but also to give it too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that. And the self-care. And it's amazing how just those little things can just make such a huge difference. Like you said, setting the coffee machine the night before, or I know certainly for myself, if I know I'm going to be a bit iffy about whether I want to go do anything the next morning, is just having my gear ready. It's not, what am I going to wear? And then by then you're back with the doona back over you saying, I'm not getting out. So, there's lots of really little practical things we can do to encourage ourselves to do what we need to do. So, Sarah, thank you so much for your time today. What's the best way people can get in contact with you if they want to be a coach or they need a coach? What's the best contact for you?
Yeah, so our website is girlbosssports.com, just how it sounds. You can also email info@girlbosssports.com. We're also on social media. You can DM us on Instagram, username girlbosssports, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all the things.
So you've got that name everywhere. That's a fantastic achievement, because that is one of the things now. It gets harder and harder to figure out what you're going to call yourself, doesn't it? And are you branching into Australia or into Europe anytime soon?
You're not the first person to ask that, actually. It's funny. I was just talking about that today. I have been asked a few times to branch out globally and also, nationally. But right now we're just focusing on Seattle and Oregon are two big areas we're expanding to. So.
Yeah. And is it? Can I just ask you another question about the soccer? Is that your predominant sport? Is it soccer coaching, or is it all sports?
So it's soccer coaching right now. We're actually expanding to basketball in Seattle shortly. And so eventually I have the goal of expanding the company nationally and globally would be awesome, but then also expanding to other sports too, because it's not just soccer that needs it. It's every sport.
Yeah, and women's soccer in America is actually a much bigger sport than certainly men's soccer. It's really a sport that has taken on and off in America, hasn't it?
Yes, and then the interesting thing about that is the huge disparity still between men and women, even when it's very clear with all of the evidence that the women are a better performing team, winning more, bringing in more money, all of the things, yet U.S. soccer is paying the men significantly more. And even just days ago, I was reading an article, this is a tangent, but something else I'm passionate about, and U.S. soccer lawyers said something along the lines of when they filed one of the things, all the legal terms, they filed something that basically said that women's sports are inferior to men and that women are weaker and slower and all the things than men, so it's inherently different jobs, and so they don't want to pay them the same. So even
was that in the 1950s or was that recently?
That was like 2 days ago.
It's just crazy, isn't it? It's just hard to believe anybody even still thinks that, yes, it might be different, but it doesn't warrant, And the sort of the audiences that women's soccer has commanded and the games of viewing, we have there's Australian rules football, and that has moved into female, and it's been enormously successful. But there's some really strong people pushing behind that. So it'll be very interesting to see where this goes. I think, Sarah, you might be back on the podcast in a year or two and we'll see what you're up to. So
that'd be awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
What a terrific conversation. I love what Sarah said about how she first approached her pricing model. How much are you paying those guys? Okay, that much. That's how much we're going to charge you too. And they agreed. There's so much I love about this interview with Sarah. When she said about her 100% all in and 100% enthusiasm, is there an off switch or a modification switch? And there isn't. And I'm 100% all in as well, so I totally resonate with that. Anyway, I'd be really interested to know which are your favourite parts from this interview. I've set up a new Facebook group and it's called Healthy Numbers Profit Lab, and it is the community for business owners and entrepreneurs who want to build and grow a profitable business. And you can join here if you go to bit.ly/capital H, capital N, capital P for profit, L for lab group. So Healthy Numbers Profit Lab group, or search for that in Facebook. I am known for being able to make complex simple. All those complicated things in business, I'm all about making business easy to understand. I'm posting regular livenars every week onto that Facebook group. I'm answering all your questions and covering all the topics you need to know to build and grow a profitable business so that you can achieve financial independence. So head over to Healthy Numbers Profit Lab group in Facebook. And for everyone listening, whether this is your first episode or you've been with us for some time, I truly believe that whatever it is you're dreaming about can become real. These podcasts are designed to inspire, educate, and inform about what it takes to start, create, and grow a business of your own. We're here to tell terrific business stories, and if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share with a friend or a colleague, someone you know who appreciates knowing more about business. Make it easy to have all the latest episodes by subscribing. As we always say, ideas without action, well, that's just what they are. They're ideas. What action are you inspired to take today? Till the next time, thanks for listening.